I want to acknowledge all Oireachtas, European Parliament, local authority member colleagues who have attended today and who are here now, all of the speakers and the contributors. When I addressed you 3 years ago, we were emerging from the pandemic, and I can recall acknowledging and paying tribute to the countless organisations, community groups who were so indispensable in terms of enabling the country to navigate the pandemic. And it gave us a renewed sense of the importance of the local community-based organisations. And you played a crucial role in maintaining links with people, some people marginalised, some vulnerable, both in terms of their medical situation, in terms of basic needs, necessities of life, in peripheral areas, and so on. And you helped to provide many critical supports and services, as well as supporting the broad national response to a 1 in 100 year event. And I think it did demonstrate the community and voluntary sector at its best, fostering civil engagement, promoting social justice, providing essential services. And the week helps to ensure that your organisations are heard within government and at government level. And I also want to pay tribute, subsequent to that, we had the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And again, many community organisations on the ground were indispensable in facilitating the implementation of the EU directive and in facilitating Ukrainians to come into the country, to integrate into local society very quickly. Our schools, I think, were first class, but outside of that, various regional and various sub-regional groups, leader organisations and so on, were very practical in their hands-on help and assistance in terms of providing pathways to work and employment or accommodation. And again, that was why we conceived of and developed the Community Recognition Award, to try and give some recognition back to communities who had welcomed Ukrainians into their communities, but also did more than that, work to try and enable integration and facilitation of all of that. And again, that represented Irish values at their best: integrity, compassion, and again, enabling communities to respond in an informed and sensitive way. And likewise, Storm Eon, or sorry, just before I go to Storm Eon, the response, just in terms of the concept of volunteerism itself and community, and Vincent referenced volunteers who work in Gaza. I've listened a lot in recent times to medical volunteers who work with various organisations, Medicine Sans Frontières and others, various organisations who have field hospitals in Gaza. Their testimony has been heart-rending. And in the last week alone, in 10 days, it's surgeons who are operating in impossible conditions and bringing home the barbaric nature of the war that Israel is waging on the people of Gaza. And I think it's one of the most noble things to do in the world, is to be a volunteer in such circumstances. Volunteer with the UN agencies, or volunteer with the various non-governmental organisations who provide, or do their best to provide, the basic necessities of life. Many have been murdered in pursuit of their duties on the Red Crescent side, and we should remember them, and we should be very conscious of the enormous sacrifices they and their families are making, which speaks to the value of community and volunteerism. Here at home, Storm Eon again revealed quite a significant degree of the importance of a strong footprint on the ground. And that was a storm like no other in terms of the degree of isolation it created very, very quickly, in terms of absence of electricity, absence of water, but also connection in terms of the mobile system and so on. And it was that sense of isolation created huge issues. And again, different organisations on the ground came together to become a focal point for many people. When I was in Roscommon, it was St. Bridget's GA Club, and Maladreen was the social community groups that pulled together in one centre, did exceptional work, pooling actually the money they got from the Community Recognition Grant, where they bought vans, and using that with social SS workers in a social scheme to transport food to more rural, isolated areas. And I got a first-hand view of how it is, of the importance of trying to resource that network better. And so coming out of Stormy, when I went back to government and I said we want to develop a system whereby we resource local community networks more effectively and on a more systemic basis. Because one of the weaknesses of Stormy was it was a bit hit and miss in having events. We will witness more extreme storms. So we have to build up our resilience, both infrastructural resilience, but on top of that then we have to build up what we might term a voluntary community resilience as well, that's sufficiently resourced, and that's something we're going to continue to work on. On the all-island basis, I'm very pleased that I think it was coming out of this conference on the last occasion and others that we said we would work with NICFA, or the Wheel would work with NICFA to apply for and get shared island funding to create an all-island approach and network, and I'm glad that did happen. And I'm very open again to north-south connectivity in this space, and we have allocated a further 1 billion for the next 10 years to the Shared Island Initiative, which gives us the time not to rush into projects for the sake of it, but to design programs effectively with quality. And it's the people-to-people connections I'm very interested in, community to community, non-political, no axe to grind. How can we improve the quality of life of people? How can we make the place that we share together and we call home, how can we make it a better place for everybody who lives here? And that's the fundamental objective of the Shared Island Initiative. And I do believe the Wheel is well placed to aid and support that initiative in the months and indeed in the time ahead. There are ongoing challenges for you, and I know that you worked very hard in terms of ensuring that we signed into law the Charities Amendment Act of 2024, again to strengthen that sector, greater transparency, clarity, fairness, and it's all about public confidence in the sector. You and others were instrumental in the preparation of the Act, and it builds on the work already being carried out by Madeleine Delaney and her team at the Charities Regulator as they continue the enormous work ahead in developing guidance and further engagements with the sector. Another key priority of government, and this government in particular, two key priorities: child poverty and the well-being of young people. And in the forthcoming budget, we would not want a very specific, I will be focusing on a very specific and targeted response to the issues of child poverty. The unit within my department is working on that already and working with all government departments. And I want to translate basically rhetoric into targeted action. There has been improvements, but there has to be a very specific and targeted approach to deal with the issue of child poverty. Disability is also key, and we are establishing, a lot of work has gone into the design of the unit within the Department of Taoiseach on disability, to act not just as a coordinator, but as a troubleshooter, really to get things done right across the board in all government departments. Every government department has to have a mission on disability, not just sort of the key leaders like education or health or disability, the new department. It has to be every single department. Enterprise in terms of work, social protection in terms of payments to people with disabilities, incentives to work, disincentives to work, removing them, every child getting a place on time, appropriate place in school, well in advance of the commencement of the next school year. The numbers identifying with special needs and additional needs has increased significantly between the last two censuses. Very significant increase, which has received, to be fair, on the education side, a very significant response. If you just look at all the numbers in special classes, I'm not going to go into numbers, but the response has been very significant. But still, too many parents, it's too hard, it's a struggle for parents to have to navigate and negotiate the system. It should be the other way around. The state, through the National Council for Special Education, needs to be proactive in facilitating the appropriate placements for children in our schools and also in the early education stage. We will be expanding the AIM program as well. And on health end, we get a flexible assessment process that also facilitates direct intervention by therapists at an early stage in a child's development. That is critical also. and that we're not kind of in a straitjacket, that it's one or the other, and so on. But there's work to be done on that yet. And the National In-Therapy School Service is commencing, will commence in the next school year. Not immediately in September. The work is already underway in that respect, starting in special schools, that will be therapists in situ in special schools. And that's something I'm personally very committed to, and it's something I want to make sure that this government over the next 4 years, that by the end of the time of government, there will have been a definitive impact on the quality of lives for families and for people with disabilities, and children in particular. And likewise, we're conscious of the pilot programs on the child poverty that the issue that I spoke about earlier in terms of the European Child Guarantee Scheme and so on. And those pilots will enable us to maybe broaden out the lessons learned across the country. And that is something that you have focused on in terms of the theme of today's conference, Thriving Through Change. We do want to work with you, Vincent, and with the organisation in terms of coming up with ideas and solutions to these issues. There's no one overall, one-size-fits-all policy in this area. So we have to take learnings and lessons from different communities, different organisations working in different sectors. Last month we welcomed very much the overwhelming approval of the trade union members for the agreement at the Workplace Relations Commission. I think important of that outcome is the future, so that we have a more seamless application of national pay deals to this sector, as opposed to having to go back every time there's a new national pay agreement, so that there's a seamless kind of continuum in terms of national negotiations between the government through the Public Expenditure Department and the unions in terms of both the public service pay agreement, but also then in terms of the voluntary community and the disability sector, health, social care sectors, and homeless services, who also work and provide services on behalf of the state. And that is a significant agreement, which I'm happy to see come through, but I equally would acknowledge there's still more work to be done, and there's anomalies, and also many people provide multiple services of different kinds and so on, and not all that may have been covered by this, but obviously human capital is key. I use the word human capital. People are key in any organisation. You've got to retain you that you're attracting in the first place, and that's where the deal which is voted on is important, and the investment that goes against it. I think it's a significant agreement, and I know Taoiseach and others are very committed to following through on this to avoid all the hassle of previous, take it where it stop-start after every public service pay agreement. Just want to again acknowledge the fantastic work that you were doing and the work that's undertaken by the Wheel. We value what it does in terms of pulling people together, supporting people through shared experience, because sometimes people think they're ploughing a lonely furrow and that nobody's listening, or that their issues are peculiar to just of their own issues. Whereas once you meet a couple of more organisations, you begin to realise it's fairly common across the sector, the challenges you face, and so on. So this is important for me to get an opportunity to speak with you as Taoiseach. I look forward to continuing engagement with the Wheel and with individual organisations that you all represent, and working to do what we can to improve the quality of life in every village, every town, every community across the length and breadth of Ireland. Thank you for your work, and I look forward to working with you in the time ahead.